Look at this map of South Asia. For decades, Pakistan has been viewed as a regional player, overshadowed by its larger neighbor, India. But what if I told you that's about to change? What if Pakistan is quietly positioning itself to challenge the established world order and become a genuine global superpower? Today, we're breaking down how a nation that was written off just years ago is now making moves that have the entire geopolitical landscape paying attention. Let's start with the reality on the ground.
Pakistan's military has undergone a complete transformation over the last 15 years.
We're not talking about incremental improvements here. We're talking about a fundamental restructuring of their entire defense apparatus. The Pakistan Army now stands at over 650,000 active personnel, making it the fifth largest standing military in the world. That's not a regional force anymore. That's a force that commands respect on the global stage. But here's what really matters. It's not just the size of the army that's changed. It's the capability. Pakistan has invested heavily in modernizing its arms systems. They've developed indigenous missile technology that rivals systems from established military powers. The Babur cruise missile, the Ababeel ballistic missile, the NASA tactical missile system. These aren't knockoffs or imports. These are arms systems designed and manufactured domestically. That represents a fundamental shift in Pakistan's strategic autonomy. Let me give you a specific example of what this means in practice. In 2017, Pakistan successfully tested the Ababeel missile, a multi-warhead ballistic missile system. This wasn't just a technical achievement. It was a statement. It said Pakistan could now develop technology at the same level as established nuclear powers. The test came after years of investment in indigenous research and development programs. Pakistan's National Engineering and Scientific Commission, established back in 1976, has been quietly building this capability for decades. By 2017, they'd reached a level where they could demonstrate a system that matched anything India or other regional competitors could field.
That's the kind of sustained commitment to military modernization that reshapes regional power dynamics.
The Pakistan Navy has also undergone massive expansion. They've commissioned new submarines, new frigates, new corvettes. They're building a blue water navy capable of power projection far beyond their immediate coastline. The addition of Type 054A frigates and indigenous submarine programs shows they're serious about controlling sea lanes and projecting influence across the Indian Ocean. This is a direct challenge to established naval powers in the region. And then there's the Air Force. Pakistan's Air Force has always been competitive, but now they're operating fifth-generation fighter jets. The JF-17 Thunder, developed jointly with China, is a game-changer. It's a lightweight, cost-effective fighter that outperforms many Western alternatives at a fraction of the price. Pakistan is exporting these jets to other nations. They're not just building for themselves anymore, they're competing in the global arms market.
As of 2023, Pakistan has delivered JF-17 fighters to Myanmar and Nigeria, with orders from other nations pending. This means Pakistan has moved from being a consumer of military technology to being a producer and exporter. That's a fundamental shift in their position in the global order. Now here's where it gets interesting. Pakistan's military modernization isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a larger strategic partnership with China. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the CPEC, represents a $62 billion investment in Pakistan's infrastructure. This isn't just about roads and ports. This is about creating the physical infrastructure necessary for Pakistan to become a major economic and military hub. Think about it this way. China is investing in Pakistan's future because they see something others don't. They see a nation positioned at a critical juncture between South Asia, Central Asia, the Middle East, and the Indian Ocean. They see a nation with a young, growing population and massive untapped potential, and they are putting their money where their mouth is. But the military buildup is only part of the story. Pakistan has also been making major diplomatic moves that signal a shift in the global balance of power. The Saudi Arabia deal is massive. Pakistan has deepened its military and strategic partnership with Saudi Arabia in ways that challenge the traditional US-Saudi relationship. Pakistan is providing military advisors, training, and strategic consultation to Saudi Arabia. They are positioning themselves as an alternative security partner to the United States. This is significant because it shows Pakistan is no longer dependent on any single power broker. They are diversifying their strategic relationships. They are playing the great game at a level that would have been unthinkable just a decade ago. In fact, consider this statistic. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, or SIPRI, Pakistan's military expenditure has increased by approximately 73% between 2010 and 2023. That's not a gradual increase. That's a dramatic acceleration in defense spending that signals serious long-term commitment to military capability. Here's a counterintuitive point that most analysts miss. Pakistan's internal security challenges over the past 2 decades actually strengthened their military in unexpected ways. Why? Because fighting complex insurgencies forced them to develop specialized capabilities, rapid response systems, and tactical innovations that most conventional militaries don't possess. Those same capabilities now give them advantages in regional power projection that nations without recent combat experience simply don't have. Their military didn't just get bigger, it got smarter. They learned hard lessons about counterinsurgency, intelligence gathering, and rapid deployment that nations without recent conflict experience haven't learned. When you take those hard-won capabilities and combine them with modern arms systems and strategic partnerships, you get a military that punches well above its weight class. If you're finding this breakdown of Pakistan's rise valuable, you need to subscribe right now. We are covering geopolitical shifts that most mainstream media completely misses. Every week we break down the moves that reshape global power dynamics. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next analysis that could change how you understand the world. And stick around, because we are about to reveal how Pakistan's relationships with the Middle East and beyond are completely rewriting the rules of the great game. Now let's zoom out across the broader Middle East and beyond. Pakistan's relationships are shifting dramatically. The recent collapse in their relationship with the United Arab Emirates is a perfect example of this new reality. Pakistan and UAE had been close partners for years, but when Pakistan moved closer to Iran and deepened their relationship with Turkey, the UAE relationship began to deteriorate. This is a nation willing to make strategic choices that upset traditional allies. They are no longer following someone else's script. The Iran connection is crucial here. Pakistan has been strengthening ties with Iran despite pressure from Saudi Arabia and the United States. They are developing border security cooperation, trade relationships, and military coordination with Iran. This positions Pakistan as a bridge between the Sunni and Shia worlds in a way that gives them unique leverage. In 2021, Pakistan and Iran agreed to establish a joint border security force along their shared frontier. This wasn't just a minor military agreement. It represented a significant deepening of military-to-military ties between two nations that have historically had complicated relationships. It showed Pakistan was willing to take independent action regardless of international pressure. Let me be clear about what's happening here. Pakistan is executing a sophisticated multi-alignment strategy. They're deepening ties with China. They're strengthening relationships with Saudi Arabia. They're engaging with Iran. They're maintaining relationships with Turkey. They're even finding ways to work with Russia. This isn't a nation that's being pulled in different directions. This is a nation that's intentionally building a web of strategic partnerships that gives them maximum flexibility and influence. Here's what I need you to understand. When we talk about Pakistan becoming a superpower, we're not talking about some distant fantasy. We're talking about a nation that's making concrete moves today that are reshaping the geopolitical landscape. Their military is becoming more capable every year. Their strategic partnerships are multiplying. Their economic infrastructure is being built out by one of the world's largest economies. These aren't hypothetical developments. These are happening right now. The arms development is accelerating. Pakistan is investing in hypersonic missile technology. They're developing advanced drone systems. They're modernizing their nuclear arsenal. Yes, Pakistan is a nuclear power, and they're making their nuclear deterrent more sophisticated, more survivable, and more credible. This changes the calculus for any nation considering military action against them. But here's what really matters. Pakistan's rise isn't just about military power. It's about strategic positioning. It's about understanding where global power flows and positioning yourself at the intersection of those flows. Pakistan sits at the crossroads of multiple critical regions. The Belt and Road Initiative runs through Pakistan. Major trade routes pass through Pakistani territory. Energy flows from Central Asia and the Middle East pass through or near Pakistan. If you understand geopolitics, you understand this is exactly where you want to be. Pakistan is essentially the hinge upon which multiple regional orders turn. They have leverage with China, with the Middle East, with Central Asia, and with South Asia. No single power can afford to ignore them. Now, I want you to pause and think about this. Just 10 years ago, Pakistan was struggling with internal instability. They were fighting insurgencies. Their economy was weak. Their military was stretched thin. Today, they've stabilized internally, they've modernized their military, and they're punching above their weight diplomatically. This is a remarkable transformation. Between 2010 and 2020, Pakistan reduced militant incidents by over 80%, according to the Global Terrorism Index. That's not a minor improvement. That's a dramatic reduction in internal security threats that freed up resources for external military modernization and strategic expansion. The question isn't whether Pakistan can become a superpower. The question is whether the established powers are ready for Pakistan's rise. Because it's happening. It's not a possibility. It's not a maybe. It's happening right now. Let me break down what this means practically. Pakistan's military power projection capabilities are expanding. Their ability to influence regional conflicts is increasing. Their economic partnerships are creating new sources of wealth and stability. Their diplomatic relationships are diversifying. All of these trends point in the same direction. Pakistan is rising. But here's the catch. Pakistan's rise challenges the established world order. It challenges the idea that some nations are destined to be great powers and others are destined to be regional players. Pakistan is saying, no, we're going to be a great power. We're going to have a seat at the table. We're going to shape global events. This is exactly the kind of nation that disrupts the status quo. This is exactly the kind of nation that reshapes the geopolitical landscape. And it's happening faster than most analysts expected. The military establishment in Pakistan is also becoming more professionalized. They're investing in military education, in strategic thinking, in long-term planning. They're not just buying armaments, they're building the intellectual infrastructure necessary to use those systems effectively in a complex geopolitical environment. The economic corridor with China is creating new sources of revenue and economic growth. As Pakistan's economy grows, their ability to fund military modernization increases. As their military becomes more capable, their strategic value to their partners increases. This creates a positive feedback loop that accelerates Pakistan's rise. Pakistan's GDP growth, while volatile, has averaged around 4% annually over the past decade. That might not sound dramatic, but for a nation of 230 million people, that translates to real economic expansion that funds military capability. Consider the Gwadar Port project, part of the larger CPEC initiative. This deep water port on Pakistan's Arabian Sea coast is transforming Pakistan's economic geography. When fully operational, Gwadar Port will handle massive volumes of cargo flowing between the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. This positions Pakistan as a critical node in global trade networks. The port began operations in 2017 and is projected to handle 40 million containers annually by 2030. That's not just an economic number. That's a fundamental shift in how global commerce flows. When you control a major port that handles that volume of international trade, you have leverage over every nation that depends on those trade routes. You have economic power. You have influence, and that economic power translates into military capability and diplomatic weight. So what does a Pakistan that's a genuine global power look like? It looks like a nation that can project military power across multiple theaters. It looks like a nation that's economically significant and strategically important to multiple global powers. It looks like a nation that shapes regional conflicts and influences global events. It looks like a nation that's no longer dependent on any single patron. It looks like a nation that sits at the intersection of multiple great power competitions and leverages that position for maximum advantage. Is Pakistan poised to challenge the established world order? Absolutely. They're already doing it. The question is whether the rest of the world is ready to acknowledge it. Because the moves are happening now. The military capability is being built now. The strategic partnerships are being forged now. And by the time the established powers fully recognize what's happened, Pakistan will already have moved to the next phase of their rise. This matters today because Pakistan's rise will reshape trade routes, influence Middle Eastern conflicts, shake the balance of power in South Asia, and determine how global energy flows. When a nation of 230 million people, sitting at the crossroads of global commerce, begins rising militarily and diplomatically, it affects everyone. It affects supply chains. It affects regional stability. It affects the calculations of every major power, from the United States to China to Russia to India. Pakistan's transformation from a struggling regional player to an emerging power is one of the most significant geopolitical shifts of the next decade, and most people aren't even paying attention. If you want to stay ahead of geopolitical shifts and understand the moves that reshape global power, subscribe to this channel right now. We break down the stories that mainstream media ignores.